Welcome to the WTF Podcast. My name is Molly Smith, and I am on a mission to equip 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk, and more importantly, how to pivot out of it. If you are watching on YouTube or listening today, you have joined me on this mission, and I am so glad that you are here. Now, friends, I got to tell you, the message that I'm sharing today has been itching to get out of me for the last couple of weeks. So buckle up, because I think it's going to be a game changer. Now, let me give you some background. A couple of weeks ago, I was driving down Central Expressway in North Dallas, and I had this divine download. And I get these sometimes where just something comes to mind, and it's like the skies have parted open, and this message that so resonates with me just downloads. So per usual, I open up my voice memo app and I hit record. And for the next 9 minutes, I just download all of the thoughts that are coming to me. And what came out was this analogy that I am sharing today. Now, in the weeks leading up to this divine download, and in the weeks since, I have had so many conversations with people, my clients, my friends, and even in my own life where this analogy has been spot freaking on. What came through was this powerful visual of a front door, a peephole, and the reminder that how we see things determines how we move through them. Now, I'm all about pivoting out of the funk because, I've been there a lot. And when we're in the funk, we tend to lose context and connection. When life feels heavy or stressful or uncertain, it's usually not because everything is falling apart. It's because our view has gotten too small. We are zoomed into that one thing, that problem, that pain, that fear, that thing that's not working. It's all we can see. And when our focus narrows that much, we disconnect from ourselves, from others, and from the divine. That's what I call peepholing. Now, I'm sure there's some random definition of peepholing on Urban Dictionary, but that's not what I'm talking about here, okay? I'm talking about those moments when we are so fixated on a problem or what's missing that it feels like you're steering through the peephole of that front door and all you can see is what's wrong. You're pressed up against it. You're searching for answers, completely unable to see what's beyond it. And the longer we stay there, the harder it becomes to breathe, to trust, and to act. And here's the truth. You can't pivot out of the funk if you don't have perspective. You can't find peace when you're disconnected from the source of it. Can I get an amen? That's why one of the keys to moving through the funk isn't forcing yourself to feel better. It's rebuilding context and restoring connection. When we widen our view, we let ourselves see more of the picture, and we start to remember that there is purpose in the unfolding. There is guidance available, and we are not alone in figuring it out. So that's what I want to walk you through today. What it looks like to move from the peephole to boarding the nearby helicopter. Now stick with me here because this analogy rocks, okay? Each step in this process is going to help us rebuild context, reconnect with the divine, and take the next best step out of the funk. But first, I want to talk about why the peephole feels so powerful and why it's so hard to pull away once we're there. When you are locked in on that problem, that thing that you don't have, your brain is going to follow your lead. We have a filter in our brain called the Reticular Activating System that filters all of the information coming at you every second and decides what gets your attention. Now, it does that based on what you are focusing on. So if your focus is on what's missing or what's not working, the RAS is going to highlight more of that. Your life suddenly hasn't gotten worse. It's that your brain is tuned into the problem frequency and is turning up the volume. That's why peepholing feels so consuming. You're not imagining it. Your focus is literally shaping what you see. And that's also why perspective and context are so powerful. When you widen your view, you're giving your brain new data, new possibilities, and new proof that more exists beyond the problem that you're focusing on. Now, awareness that you're steering through the peephole is the first step, but it's not enough just to know. You have to change your view. And that starts with one simple move. We are going to open the door. Now, when you open the door, your perspective starts to expand. Now you see the front yard, the house across the street, maybe the neighbors walking their golden retriever right past your house. You take in a little bit more of what's real, what's happening right now in this moment. Your problem hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer the only thing in focus. This is where you can start to breathe again. The grip loosens. You can see that hard thing you're facing isn't the entirety of your story. It's just part of what's there. Opening the door brings you back into the present moment, grounding you enough to realize that there's more here than just this problem. Now, once you've opened the door and taken that first breath of perspective, something in you is going to want to move. And that's when you're going to take another step and walk down the sidewalk and go stand on the curb. From here, the view changes again. You see up and down the street more of what's connected, more of what's in motion. Inside, the same thing starts to happen. You begin to see how your situation connects to something larger. You notice the timing, the relationships, and the lessons that weren't visible when you were stuck inside. This is where true context begins to build. You start connecting the dots. You begin to sense that what maybe felt hard is actually shaping you, not punishing you. It's the shift from feeling like everything's happening to you to realizing that it's happening for you and through you. And that's when your energy begins to stabilize. The panic begins to quiet. You are no longer reacting. You're responding and observing with compassion instead of fear. This is what awareness in motion feels like, stepping into a wider, truer view of your life. Now, from the curb, you found your footing, but it's time to rise. So I want you to imagine that a helicopter has landed in the street in front of your house. You climb aboard and it starts lifting off the ground. As you ascend, the noise fades and your view expands again. You can see the bigger picture, how the streets connect, how everything flows, and even the slowdowns you couldn't see from the ground. And with that higher view, something inside you begins to soften. You're no longer straining to make sense of it all. You're beginning to feel the presence of something greater moving through it. From up here, the patterns emerge, and what once felt random now feels divinely ordered. You can see how that setback has redirected you, how that delay was actually protection, and how that detour is preparing you for what's next. This is the view of divine perspective where control gives way to trust and where faith begins to rise again. Can I get an amen? Oh, damn, this is good. You may not have all the answers, but you can sense the guidance. You can feel the Creator's hand in the unfolding. And that's the real gift of elevation. Clarity, yes, but also connection. The higher you rise, the closer you feel to the source of wisdom, grace, and peace. That's where the context becomes clear, because you're no longer trying to figure it out on your own. When I'm pressed up against the peephole, all I can see is that it's happening to me. I can't see the lesson, the timing, or the purpose. It's hard to stay connected to the Creator when I'm zoomed into the chaos because I'm only tuned into what's right in front of me, the problem. But when I open the door and I start to get a little bit more perspective, and when I step to the curb or I rise up in that helicopter view, everything starts to shift. Context reconnects me to the divine. It changes how I interpret what's happening. See, when we're stuck looking through the peephole, our energy collapses inward. Our nervous system gets stuck in survival mode. We're not thinking about growth or gratitude, friends. We're just trying to make it through the ever-loving day. Can I get an amen, right? That's what creates the feeling of disconnection. It's not that God or the universe stopped speaking. It's that we have tuned into the wrong frequency. When we expand our perspective, we change the channel. We come back into alignment with a bigger story that's unfolding. And here's what's wild. Science actually backs this up. When we zoom out and take in more context, our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles perspective and meaning and creative problem solving, comes back online. It's the moment your brain shifts out of survival and back into possibility, where hope and wisdom live. It's not coincidence, friends. It's co-creation. Context is what allows us to see the divine order of what first felt like disorder. It restores faith. It turns confusion into clarity. And it reminds us that we're not being punished, we're being prepared. Because once you can see the bigger picture, once you can feel that connection again, you remember you were never separate from the process. You were always being guided. The peephole is survival. The doorway is awareness. The curb is context. And the helicopter is connection. Each step lifts you closer from fear to faith, from chaos to clarity, from control to co-creation. So let's take that breath. Let's loosen our grip and widen our view, because the next best step out of the funk is waiting. And it's a whole lot easier to see it when we stop looking through the peephole. If this episode impacted you in any way, please consider sharing it and helping me reach 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk and, more importantly, how to pivot out of it. Until next time, friends.